Tyrion Lannister's greatest tragedy lies in his past. He tells a story fairly early on in the series that defines his internal monologue and eventual growth on a far greater scale than anything else that happens to him or around him. It's one of the most tragic and horrific occurrences we hear about in A Song of Ice and Fire, and it's as painful for him to revisit as it is for the viewer to hear for the first time. When Tyrion was 13, he and his brother Jaime found a common girl who was set upon by outlaws on the road. Jaime ran them off, and Tyrion comforted this girl. Her name was Tysha. Tyrion and Tysha quickly fell in love and were married by a drunken septon with pigs as witnesses. They lived in a cottage by the sea for the next 2 weeks, blissfully happy. Their bliss was shattered when the Septon informed Tyrion's father Tywin that his son and heir had wed a commoner. Tywin had Jaime tell his brother the truth, that Tysha was a prostitute who had been paid by Jaime to give Tyrion experience. The story grows far darker from there. Tywin gave his son's wife to the Lannister guards, then to himself, and then to Tyrion. He then sent Tysha off, never to be seen again in the main series. So far, at least. This story is also told during season 1 of HBO's Game of Thrones, but there it lacks a lot of the focus it gets in the text. It's an element of Tyrion's backstory in both instances, but the book draws far more attention to the tale via both its echoes and Tyrion's thoughts, and it's playing a pivotal role in his arc in future novels. This role comes from a revelation at the end of the third book, A Storm of Swords. That Tysha wasn't a prostitute, that Jaime didn't pay her, and that she truly loved Tyrion. It's this revelation that leads directly to Tywin's death. Tyrion demands to know where his father sent his first wife. Tywin claims to not even remember her name and states that she went wherever whores go. It's this insult that costs the Great Lion his life, and that statement reverberates through Tyrion's psyche for all of the next book. He spends a dance with dragons asking everyone he comes across where whores go, in the hopes of finding his long-lost wife. This location alluded to by Tywin has remained an enduring mystery, though author George R. R. Martin has stated that the readers will find out where whores go in future books. But fortunately, you won't have to wait until future books. I think I've found Tysha, and today I'll explain where she is and what she's been up to based on a series of clues Martin has been planting since the beginning of the series. It's worth mentioning that there are a number of other theories regarding Tysha's potential location that are already out there, chief among them being that she's the Sailor's wife, a prostitute in Essos who we meet in A Dance with Dragons. Not only is there a general lack of any significant evidence to support that assertion, but I also don't like it because it really doesn't do anything thematically. Additionally, it's my belief that there is no indication at all in A Dance with Dragons of Tysha's location, and intentionally so, at least not in Tyrion's story, but I'll get back to that. Both Tyrion and the reader are flailing wildly, attempting to latch on to any information that could point them in the direction of what they seek. With that said, Martin did plant clues as to Tysha's location at different places in the series. People are just looking for these clues in the wrong locations. Martin's hints on this matter would likely need to meet two main requirements. Firstly, I think any hints would likely be related to or coming from Tywin. He's the source of Tyrion's current knowledge on Tysha, and he's also the only individual confirmed to know anything about what happened to her. Second, it would probably originate from the same book as the Tysha reveal and Wherever Whores Go, meaning that this particular arc was fully set up within a singular text. With that in mind, I reread A Storm of Swords, looking for hints on Tysha's eventual destination, and I found far more than I ever expected. I hit pay dirt in Tyrion's first chapter. In fact, I hit pay dirt twice in Tyrion's first chapter. Relevant information being hidden here at the very start of his arc really tracks with how Martin likes to write character arcs in general. There's great significance to both the point of beginning and the point of ending. It's quite similar to how he writes chapters. Oftentimes, the most important lines are the first and the last. And here, Tyrion's first and last chapters hold the key to this mystery. Hiding these clues in the first chapter is a great idea, given the context that the reader has at that point. Myself and many other readers passed these hints by, as we aren't on the lookout for Tysha's whereabouts this early, because it doesn't come up until the very end of the novel. I do have to ask, where do you think Tysha is? Let me know in the comments. Make sure there are no answers repeated, so get creative. And also, a couple other things. I have a Tyrion playlist in the description, similar to what I did with Cersei in that video a month or so ago. Additionally, I started a Patreon over the last month, so feel free to join that if you want to be able to vote on future video topics, have your name in the description, and maybe even see some videos early. Additionally, be sure to like, comment, and subscribe, all the typical YouTube stuff. And last but not least, shout out to my good friend InGen, who helped me bounce some ideas for this theory. Tyrion 1, A Storm of Swords, focuses on the half-man's recovery from the Blackwater, including a meeting with his father Tywin. It's from this meeting that the first nugget of relevant information pops up, and it's fairly easy to miss. Tywin mentions Tysha twice in the entire series, and the first of those two instances takes place right here. Tyrion is seeking a reward for his victory in the Blackwater and requests to be formally named as Tywin's heir. Tywin lashes out in response, listing off what he views as Tyrion's negative qualities. He also then turns to his son's habits regarding women, which he views as a negative, specifically asking about Tysha. He then immediately follows this up by saying he will not let Tyrion turn Casterly Rock into his whorehouse. It's an iconic line and one that was used in the television adaptation, but in the presence of another paragraph from earlier in this same chapter, it really made some alarm bells go off in my head. To provide some context for the passage below, Tyrion is departing his chambers for the first time since taking several grievous wounds on the Blackwater. To quote from Tyrion 1, A Storm of Swords, "Even so, he was dizzy by the time he turned the latch, and the descent down the twisting stone steps made his legs tremble. He walked with a stick in one hand and the other on Pod's shoulder. A serving girl was coming up as they were going down. She stared at them with wide, white eyes, as if she were looking at a ghost. The dwarf has risen from the dead," Tyrion thought. "And look, he's uglier than ever. Run, tell your friends." When taken together with Tywin's comment, this quote seems to be setting up a parallel later on down the line in the future of the series. In the present of the story, it's clear that many Westerosi likely assume that Tyrion Lannister is dead, not Cersei Lannister, but many others. Tyrion is likely going to return to Casterly Rock at some point before the conclusion of the series, likely to claim the castle for Daenerys' cause. His most likely point of entry is the sewers, as Tywin charged him with their maintenance upon Tyrion reaching the age of majority. Whatever battle will take place there, Tyrion may emerge from the muck into the halls where he walked as a child for the first time in a lifetime, as a ghost and as a changed man. He'll be immediately repulsive then and now in Storm and in the Winds of Winter, due to his grievous wounds in the first instance and from the sewers in Casterly Rock in the latter. In both situations, a serving girl will stare at him aghast. A dwarf she once knew has risen from the dead. I believe that Tysha Lannister is currently a serving girl at Casterly Rock. I realize that there are a number of apparent problems with this assertion. First and foremost, Tyrion lived in the Rock for years following the Tysha incident and apparently never bumped into his ex-wife. Also, Tywin's motivation for keeping Tysha around might seem contradictory to some of his other actions in the story, and I'm sure you have a billion other questions. All that and more I intend to answer, and I have, I think, pretty good answers for here. Tywin Lannister is the key to understanding Tysha's current whereabouts. He is the one who tortured her, he is the one who sent her away, and he may be the only one who knows the truth of her current situation. What do Tywin's past actions tell us about how he would handle a situation like this? Fortunately, or rather unfortunately, we do have a prior example of exactly what Tywin does in situations like this. After Tywin's mother died, his father, Tytos, a lot of Ty names in this video, took up with a common woman. That woman took the castle quite well and even started wearing some of his late mother's jewelry. Upon the death of Tytos, Tywin took drastic action against this common-born woman who he viewed as staining his family's and father's legacy. The new Lord of the Rock forced his father's mistress to do a walk of atonement through Lannisport, before banishing her from the Westerlands forever. We first learn about this incident in A Storm of Swords, which in my mind deepens this particular nugget of information's value as a potential hint in the direction that Tywin took with Tysha. There are key similarities and differences between the Tyto situation and the Tysha incident. In both instances, Tywin Lannister takes drastic action in torturing and humiliating a common-born girl whose only sin was their romantic relationship with a male Lannister. In both instances, torture was focused on the source of their supposed wrongdoing in Tywin's eyes, that being their sexuality. And both were intended to send a message. The first to the realm about the legacy of Tywin's father and who he is as a ruler, and the second to his son about what befits a Lannister. The main variance between these two tragic situations is their conclusions. As mentioned, Tytos' mistress was banished, never to be seen nor heard from again. In Tysha's case, the opposite was likely true for one very specific reason: the possibility of an heir. Tytos' mistress was very unlikely to be pregnant due to his advanced age, and even if she were, such a child's claim would pale in comparison to Tywin's and his three brothers. Tysha having a son would potentially be calamitous for Tywin. Tyrion is his only heir at that point, given that Jaime joined the Kingsguard and Cersei is married to Robert and will not inherit. If Tysha got pregnant during their 2-week marriage, that child would have a very legitimate claim on Casterly Rock after the deaths of Tywin and Tyrion. Sending her away would be incredibly risky, as she could return with a child she claims to be Tyrion, even if it's not Tyrion's, and make a play for the Rock. This is an unlikely scenario, but I'm sure it's something that Tywin considered. We see a similar situation play out in the main series. Robb Stark's widow, Jane Westerling, is kept close and monitored vigilantly by the Lannisters, specifically Jaime, following the young wolf's death, just to be sure there are no heirs to the north popping up in the immediate future. The possibility of Tysha burying Tyrion's child, not burying, would be a strong motivation for Tywin to keep tabs on her. Exile was not a legitimate possibility, so the Warden of the West would likely want to keep his ex-daughter-in-law close. But why wouldn't Tyrion have bumped into Tysha at Casterly Rock if that's where she was kept? For reference, the pair was married in 283 AC. The absolute earliest that Tyrion could have gone off to court in King's Landing was 290 AC. That's a minimum of a 7-year overlap, and given his status as essentially part of the serving staff, Tyrion would undoubtedly know if Tysha also worked within his castle. Tywin's main goal here was to separate Tyrion from his wife, but also keep tabs on her. So he'd undoubtedly send her away, but how far away? I don't believe Tysha was in Casterly Rock for that 7-year period. Indeed, I don't think that Tysha was in Casterly Rock until A Feast for Crows, because there is one family, one individual that is perfect. He is an individual that Tywin trusts completely and could be given this very valuable asset to keep tabs on and ensure she does not produce an heir. He would need to pass her along to someone he trusts to keep a secret, especially a secret that impacts the legacy of House Lannister. There is only one individual that Tywin would trust absolutely with such detrimental information: his brother, Kevan. Kevan is the perfect candidate to sequester Tysha. He's a Lannister, so he's a very strong, vested interest in maintaining this secret. He's close to the Rock, but he's not in the Rock itself. Kevan and his family live in Lannisport, which is both near the castle, but is also a massive city in and of itself. Keeping Tysha away from Tyrion in a city that large, especially when the half-man usually lives in the Rock, would be fairly easily to do. Kevan is someone who's also traveling a fair bit and who Tyrion interacts with several times throughout the main series. It'd be easy for him to bump into Tysha if she'd been brought to court as a part of Kevan's household. It's a good thing that we get explicit confirmation several times that not all of Kevan's household came to court. Several direct mentions are made of Kevan's wife, Dorna Swyft, remaining in the Westerlands as she prefers life there to that in King's Landing. Lannisport is Dorna's preferred home. That much is mentioned directly, but we know it's not her home at present. Early on in A Feast for Crows, Kevan departs King's Landing to rule the Westerlands from its high seat, Casterly Rock. This would mean that Dorna and her household are currently occupying the Lannister seat, and will likely be the individuals from which the castle is eventually claimed by Dany or potentially Aegon. By Tyrion, if it's Dany. This would go a long way to explaining why Dorna has received a fairly decent amount of focus in the story, especially when compared to other characters who appeared only in appendices. Tyrion thinks about her as early as the first book in the series, and Cersei explicitly considers her when making political moves in the capital in Feast. She's also one of the last thoughts we have in the series so far as of A Dance with Dragons. Kevan's internal monologue turned to his wife and sons when it becomes apparent that he will imminently die by Varys' hand. She's being set up as someone who may have a role to play in the story to come, which makes sense given how few individuals of note remain in the Westerlands right now. Tyrion thinking about Dorna could be further set up for him blaming himself once he discovers Tysha. He knew his aunt, but he never paid enough attention to her household to realize that his wife was hiding in plain sight. Where do whores go? To Kevan's wife, apparently. I've saved up a couple of quotes from later on in A Storm of Swords for near the end of this theory, as I think there's something of a smoking gun. Kevan and Tyrion interact a lot during this book, which could deepen the relationship and signal importance there. Both of these quotes come from Tyrion 9, A Storm of Swords, as he's awaiting his trial in the depths of the Red Keep. To quote from Tyrion 9, "Your sisters had no difficulty finding witnesses to your guilt." Sir Kevan rolled up the parchment. "Sir Adam has men hunting for your wife. Varys has offered 100 stags for word of her whereabouts, and 100 dragons for the girl herself." That night, alone in his tower cell with a blank parchment and a cup of wine, Tyrion found himself thinking of his wife. Not Sansa, his first wife, Tysha. The whore wife, not the wolf wife. Her love for him had been a pretense, yet he'd believed and found joy in that belief. Give me sweet lies and keep your bitter truths. He drank his wine and thought of Shay. Later, when Sir Kevin paid his nightly visit, Tyrion asked for Varys. Kevin tells Tyrion that men are seeking his wife, followed by Tyrion's thoughts turning to Tysha before Kevin reappears in the same paragraph, which to me is a pretty clear textual tie between these two very disconnected plot threads. In addition to being the best logical fit as to Tysha's location, this theory works on a deeper thematic level. Tyrion is Tywin's son. His aunt says that he is the true inheritor of Tywin's legacy, and we see that time and time again through Tyrion's cunning and cruelty. There are a plethora of parallels between father and son, and this theory could add another. Were it true, it would mean both Tywin and Tyrion hid a common born girl who they viewed as a prostitute as a serving girl for the purposes of hiding a woman from the other. Tywin hid Tysha as a serving girl, and Tyrion hid Shay as Sansa's handmaiden, both beneath the other's nose. It's also worth noting that Martin stated we will find out where whores go. I mentioned that before, but it does bear repeating in that we will definitely find this out by the end of the series. We will find out where Tysha went at some point in the future, which in my view does increase the likelihood of her being somewhere will definitely go in the Winds of Winter or A Dream of Spring. And Martin has dedicated an entire blog post to detailing Casterly Rock and how it functions. Thank you all so much for watching. I was really excited for this theory. I'm excited to hear your thoughts. I think it's pretty new, and I genuinely think I'm right about something for once, which is bizarre. And it's also not about John Connington. So yeah, it's great. It's a win-win. If you enjoyed, be sure to leave a like, subscribe, let me know what you think in the comments down below. I'll have many more videos on A Song of Ice and Fire, House of the Dragon, Game of Thrones, Dunk and Egg. I've listed all 4. I'm good. Yeah, that'll be the near future. I'll have many more videos coming out directly for you specifically. I do this all for you.